להיות פה היום בערב עם כולכם. יש לנו כמה אורחות מארצות הברית, והספר עצמו באנגלית, אז אנחנו נערוך את הערב באנגלית, ועכשיו אני אעבור לאנגלית. So, friends, colleagues, groupies of Alice, we're all here to celebrate the new book. And so, my name is Leslie Sachs, and I'm the MC today, or maybe the MT, because I'm the mistress of time. That's my job, to make sure that everything's on time, and that's why I rushed you in. We have a very exciting evening today. And we're going to start off, as you know, well, before that, many of you who know me know that I really love Jewish feminist rituals. So this is not a feminist ritual. Please take your phones out and switch them off, or put them on silent. As you will know, when you've read the book, Alice loves music. And so we're going to start off with some music. The way the evening will look is we're going to start off with music. Then we're going to have a panel with our fabulous, interesting panelists. Then we'll have another musical interlude. And Alice will be reading 2 excerpts from her book, and I'll be asking her questions. And then we'll open it up to you for questions. So prepare questions, even if you haven't read the book, which you will. You are definitely invited to ask questions. So I would like to... There's seats down here. You're welcome to come down and sit right over here. Can I carry on, Alice? Thank you. So, we have here the Carmel Quartet joining us, and their names are Rachel Ringstein on violin, and Tali Goldberg on violin, Joel Weber on viola, and Tammy Waterman on cello. Now is the challenging part. It's the Schubert String Quartet, Rosamunde, number 13, Opus 29, second movement, Andante in A minor. I'd like to introduce our panelists. Each of them influential and active and well-known in their own field and close friends of Alice. I will introduce all three and then just ask a few questions and ask each of them to relate to one of the general topics that Alice writes about, because no spoilers, we want you to read the book. The book, yet again, I am showing you, anyone who hasn't bought it. So, Rabbi Levi Wallman Kelman is founding mythical rabbi of Kol HaNeshama, my rabbi, Jerusalem-based Reform congregation, and now serves as the president of Rabbis for Human Rights. Dr. Leah Shaktiel. Leah is a religious feminist, and she's an educator and social activist residing in Yerucham. Leah is a board member of Ozen Shalom, a Jewish religious peace movement. She's at present an Orthodox rabbinic student at the Harel Bet Midrash in Jerusalem. Professor Hannah Herzog, Professor Emeritus of the Tel Aviv University, and Associate Director of an organization called Shavot, which means equal, which is a center for the advancement of women in the public sphere. So, thank you everybody for joining. Like, you would say no to Alice, there's no way. Livy, I wanted to start with my question for you. Alice, all her life, and especially I know during the years at the Israel Women's Network, was very different in many ways from the typical feminist. She was an Orthodox woman. And it influenced a lot of her decisions and a lot of the way she acted. And many feminist, religious, Orthodox women looked up to her. They kind of felt, well, if she can do it, then we can do it. Be both feminist and Orthodox, and bring these two sides of us harmoniously together. When Alice decided to leave, the letters and messages it was like an earthquake. I remember words like betrayal being thrown into the air. And Levi, since you made that kind of transition or something similar, and that is one of the areas that you are a specialist in, religion, I wanted to ask you to talk a bit about that pull between being a feminist and an Orthodox woman, and that transition, because it's clear that it wasn't an easy transition for Alice. Shift.
Erev Tov. So I feel compelled to start with a quote from Shakespeare, which is way out of my field. But I was told that in Julius Caesar it says about Cleopatra, custom cannot stale her infinite variety. And,
that's Cleopatra.
That's Cleopatra. And it's interesting that in your book, Alice, you talk a lot about your sense of your own physical self. So I think you'll all find that interesting. But certainly one of the things that comes out in the book is this infinite variety, your insatiable appetite to explore things and to constantly question things. And especially in religious life, that's really unusual. In a less well-known quote from Heschel, Rabbi Heschel said, most people in their lives only think once. You get an idea, you think it through, you go, okay, I'm going to stick with this. He said it's the unusual person who thinks a second time, who questions their original assumptions. And I think one of the great gifts that you give us, Al, you're like an explorer in the world of spirituality and religion, that constantly exploring and checking out new areas. I felt a little funny when I was asked to talk about to focus on your religious development, because one of the things that also comes out in the book, how it's really hard to differentiate between you as a political activist, as an educator, as a spiritual seeker. They're all infused by that same passion for the search for justice. So it's a little hard for me to just relate to you in a separate category as religious seeker, but you really are an incredible model. I know it mostly from my own family life. My father also left Orthodoxy and went on to be a leader in the conservative movement. And I don't think there was a day that he didn't somehow, on some deep psychological level, really have to confront what it did to his family, what it did to his friends, and he worked very hard every day of his life to maintain contact with the most Orthodox of his relatives, of his siblings. He called his mother every day, and so I saw in him how complicated it is to leave that worldview, but it takes incredible courage to be so committed to justice that when you see that this way is not, it doesn't jive with my sense of justice, and I can no longer continue in this path. And yet somehow to stay loyal to it at the same time. So I think that's a spiritual richness that most of us do not reach that level. I think most of us are in Heschel's category of thinking once and pretty much sticking with what we thought we knew when we were so smart when we were 18. And it's a great gift reading your memoir to see how the spiritual adventure can continue and not be abated at all as one gets older. So that's, I think, a great gift that the book gives to us. Also, what most people don't know about my relationship with Alice is that we come from the same Hasidic world, and that is we are from, and this is a little obscure probably for some people, that we grew up or from families that were associated with the Hoshatna Klois of Rizhiner Hasidim, right? The Rebbe of Rizhin had 5 sons. The youngest son was the Rebbe of Rizhin, and so a Klois is like a subgroup in the Hasidic world. And my grandfather and great-grandfather were Rabbeim in the Hoshatna world, which means, and we all heard about Alice's love of music, that we have certain tunes that Alice would probably make a face at the use of the word tunes at some of our Hasidic. They can be challenging. They don't sound like Schubert. Let's face it. So I wanted to say something in the name of the Rizhiner. Really, when I think of Alice's spiritual path, I really, it almost sounds trite to say it comes down to V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha ani Adonai. You should love your neighbor as yourself. I am God. From Vayikra, from Leviticus, it's I don't know, certainly one of the best known lines in the Bible. And the Rizhiner Rebbe has a commentary on this verse, and he does it in terms of a story, which is also appropriate for someone so committed to literature. V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha ani Adonai. You should love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord. Why do you need I am the Lord? Wouldn't it be enough to say there's a commandment to love your neighbor as yourself? So he says, it's once upon a time, there were 2 friends who loved each other so much. It was an unbelievable friendship. But life happens and they had to go separate ways, and one of the friends moved very, very far away from the center of the kingdom. And then a tragedy happened, and the one who lived near the center was falsely arrested, falsely accused of a terrible crime, and was sentenced to death. And the whole kingdom was invited to come and watch the execution. And so this friend came, not knowing who was going to be executed, comes and he sees his friend standing in the gallows. And he realizes what's going on, and he screams out, "Do not execute him, I am guilty." And the friend at the gallows sees that it's his beloved friend who's claiming to be guilty, and he says, "No, no, kill me, he certainly is innocent." And the two of them start arguing, kill me, because don't kill the other one. And all hell breaks loose, pandemonium. And the king says, "Hold everything, I want to speak to both of you. Come into my chamber." And the king says, "What's going on?" And the friend who came from afar says, "Look, I don't know what's going on here, but I do know my friend. And I know that he is incapable of doing what you have accused him of. And maybe I did something terrible that I'm being punished, that I have to watch him be executed, and I can't bear that." And the other friend said, I absolutely will not let you kill my friend. This is a friend who, I want him to live. I love him so much." And the king says, "Okay, nobody's getting executed. That's it. But I have one request. Can I be your friend? Can I be included in this friendship?" And the Rishon says, that's v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha ani Adonai. When you really love each other, that's where I am found. I want to be with you when you love each other. And I think Alice's great religious contribution, what goes through all of your religious development, is v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. And as someone who counts, I get to count myself as one of your friends, and I look at the crowd here tonight and I see so many people who love you so much. I think that you have really succeeded in bringing God into our world by showing us what love and friendship is all about.
When I discovered that Levi also came from a family who were devotees, Hasidim of the Hushatana Rebbe, we both remembered that there was a special nigun for Kol Mekadesh Shabbat, or Kol Mekadesh Shabbos, right? Yeah, right. And it's the most awful, non-melodious tune you've ever heard in your life. Right. I mean, you would never remember it. But when I come to Kelman, Levi Kelman, and to Paula for Friday night dinners, I often take refuge there. We sing Kol Mekadesh Shabbos, and it's awful, but somehow it binds us to each other with our common ancestry.
And this is so a wonderful opportunity to welcome two of your friends who came especially from the United States for this evening, Sally and Mariam. Welcome, thank you for coming. Alice writes a lot about Pelech, and there's no question that, again, she was a pioneer and she brought tremendous change. Every time we talk and she needs anything, she says, "Oh yes, one of my pupils is there and she's doing this and that." So they're everywhere. And I wanted to ask you to talk a bit about the whole issue and system of education of Orthodox young women, older women. And one of the things that I wanted to ask you, like towards the end, is, and I'll ask it now, is it a one-way road, or could we have a backlash there?
This is such an honor to be here tonight, but I also feel this a tremendous fall of energy. I mean, following this uplifting moment, I'm asked a very academic question. So I'll try to put it in somewhat a more personal context.
You can answer whatever you want.
Yeah, right. Well, I remember in the 1970s in Jerusalem how, as an Israeli, as a Sabra, I sort of drifted towards a group of Anglos that were beginning to establish here the flirt with Jewish feminism. And it was really just beginning. And part of it was this thing about this school that was led by this woman who came to the group of Pnina Peli with the Sefer Torah to have her aliyah for the first time. She had this woman called Beverly who was teaching Talmud. My God, I mean, this woman with a doctorate in Talmud, she came to teach girls Talmud in Jerusalem in that school that she does. It was like this, what's going on here? In this group of women that were claiming the Torah as their own, claiming education, first-class education as their own, and claiming that it has to do with this new consciousness, not just of feminism, but Jewish feminism. Not Jewish women who are feminists, which had been there, but Jewish feminism, asking the question, what would it be like? And of course the answer was Torah. What do we do with the Torah? How do we make the Torah ours? How do we make it our own? And how do we move from there? I have to also, here is a confession, a personal confession. In the 1970s, it was part of my world, but it was not the main issue. I was about moving left in my politics, to peace and human rights, to social justice. I was about moving to Yerucham, and feminism as an issue of activism, of intended activism, came into my life only in the early 1980s. This is after I had been elected to the local council of Yerucham as the first woman ever and the only woman to serve on it. Mind you, only after that did it dawn on me that feminism was actually an issue of political activism. Why did it dawn on me? I have to tell you, it was partly, mainly had to do with the fact that this religious woman, this mother figure, in Jerusalem was making waves. Definitely, Alice. I mean, it had to do with that. Something was happening, that you were right there at the forefront. It wasn't just Pelech. It was in addition to this Pelech business, now she's doing the women's network, which in Hebrew it sounds more shdula, like, so the network sounds a little, no, it's not about just networking. So I felt called upon to move on and think about the connection between empowering women through education, empowering women in politics, empowering women in religion. You all know about my religious council adventure and stuff, but about Torah learning and placing Torah at the center and moving it on. I think that you were a beacon of that, you still are, and your ability to lead us onto it. I was embarrassed before when you erroneously thought I had a doctorate, because this touches a very raw nerve. If there is one person in the world that did everything she could in order to get me to do my doctorate, this is Alice. And it never happened because of my mixed up, world. But
to be a rabbi soon.
Hopefully, if I'm paying a psychologist now, not to do this, okay? Not to get distracted, because I'm too distracted with my activism. So this is one of the lessons I learned. I think that women's education, religious women's education, is definitely the most important revolution ever since the Zionist revolution in the Jewish world. And I think that it is there because we understood the Marxist principle that if we, the proletariat, do not take by force with our own hands, if we don't take over the means of production, and the means of production of the Jewish people was the Torah, if we don't take that, it won't happen. We have here another leader of all of this, Blue Greenberg, is here, Jewish feminism. I'm sorry, I mean, there are a lot of people here, but I have to mention also somebody else who is one of those pioneers, Dr. Debbie Weissman. I can't see you, but I know that who was the first one to do the research about the Yaakov in Poland as a revolutionary movement, and then she moved on to do her doctorate about women's schools in Jerusalem, and to point at the difference between what happens to women when they flourish in an all-girls institution, and why are they so shortchanged in so-called egalitarian co-ed education. Debbie just reminded me of one of the researchers. You know, we're not talking about a boys' institution where women are allowed to study also. We're talking here about nurturing women's education in their own. It's something precious. And I never believed, I remember when Blue was asked in conferences, will there be Orthodox women's rabbis? And we always used to say, you know, back then, yes, it'll be in the next generation. Well, it's happening now. And 3 years ago, when I saw an ad in the paper, I said, why not me? And I enlisted in a program where it's much more difficult for me to catch up on the halacha, brisk style, okay, with a student of Rabbi Soloveitchik. It's much more difficult for me than it is for my daughter to catch up on this Torah. And this is a revolution that you were definitely one of the leaders of in Israel, but also it resonates for the whole Jewish world. I think that revolutions don't just happen once and finished. You know, to go back to what you said, you know, most people do something once, check, finished. Revolutions need to be fought again and again every day. They have to be maintained. You have to make sure that you don't slide back. You know, backlash is sometimes you say, oh, it's so dramatic, it's happening, there's a backlash. I blame it on them. You know, they are doing it. The sliding, the slow process of erosion of the revolution is much more dangerous. And it is something that needs to be fought uphill all the time. Tikkun Olam is not, let's sit back and wait for a new age type of karma for the world to be better. It's about daily struggle, and that's part of it. And I think that you are a role model of a person who is not defeated by age or by the changing times. You are there for us, you know, to show us how it continues and how you have to find, against whatever happens in life and whatever happens in politics out there, you have to find the inner resources to continue asking every day, you know, what needs to be done now. You never tire of doing that. You never, and you give us, your younger friends, you give us the energy to say, Alice says, yes we can. Alice says, yes we can. So today we can, tomorrow we can, next week we can. We take that energy from your modeling. And I think that I'm not the only person in this room who's very grateful for that. Thank you.
Hannah, I remember at the Israel Women's Network, you were a model for us as a pioneer of research in the area of gender. And a lot of our activity, as far as women in politics went, was based on your research. So you're really one of those stones that the network stood on. And I wanted to ask you to talk a bit about that and about those years. The microphone is yours.
Thank you very much. It's an honor for me to talk here today. And actually I took not only my feminist status, but also my research position as a scholar. And I did several things regarding your book. So I know that Lassie told me to speak only 10 minutes. So I wrote down to be precise and also to relate the text, because the book is so rich. And so I learned so much about you, things that I didn't know before, but I was constrained to the politics, so I wanted to begin with it. So Alice's autobiography takes us on a voyage through time, her own life and the feminist movement development. She shares with us the private experiences and the public experiences going forward and backward in time and event. I believe that being an English literature scholar assists you, Alice, to choose the technique of nonlinear story in narrating your never native autobiography. However, I would like to, in the short time I have, to suggest some of my personal and sociological and feminist interpretation of your choice. Never a native surely reflects Alice's experiences and feelings, as she nicely explained in the interview you gave just last Saturday. I said bed, I heard it, and I'm not going to read, you have to read it. But Alice's life story fits wonderfully to the sociological term coined by George Zimmer, the stranger. Zimmer differentiates the stranger from both the outsider, who has no specific relation to a group where he comes to, and from the wanderer who comes today and lives tomorrow. The stranger, he says, comes today and stays tomorrow. The stranger is a member of a group in which she lives. He said it, of course, hey, but I speak about you, so in a place that she lives and participates, and yet remains with some distance from others, the natives, the members of the groups that you now belong to. The never native positionality gave Alice the ability to see what natives, we, in a given time and culture, didn't see. It gave her the freedom, the power, and the ability to criticize dominant culture and to struggle for social change and to become the most influential figure in the Israeli feminist movement. To those of you who have not read yet the book, I just mentioned that nonlinear technique enables Alice to narrate her story from different positions of departure in time and space and context. While doing so, she blurs the boundaries between the private and the public, between her different roles as a family member and her professional and political activities, between rational and emotional decisions. She shares with us success and failures, and thus not only blurs the dominant perception of linear development in our lives, but also in the feminist movement. There are parallel stories within the feminist movement. We should think in terms of simultaneously and multiplicity, or as we say in Hebrew, gam and gam. And gam and gam, she was not by herself there in the thing that she said, and she did it with many women, and sometimes with conflict, and sometimes with cooperation. So the nonlinear approach telling opens an option to tell a complex story of the feminist movement, in general, in Israel in particular, and in Alice's life experiences. So, in such situation of nonlinear story, where we begin to tell her story. Her story, the personal story of Alice, and also her story of the feminist movement. Again, citing. Any year can be taken as a beginning, wrote Michael Young, a sociologist of time. But we should put a frame around some numbers of years which will be ours, a starting date with some special significance has to be chosen. The examination of the selection of the shaping events that Alice brings in her book reveals the changes in the definition of her and our identity. It highlights conflicts and collaboration from outside and within the feminist movement. No less, it highlights the changes that took place in the composition of partners in the process of defining our identity. However, for me, as political sociologist, as feminist activist, Alice described especially a significant event that can be defined as the beginning, the Namir Commission or Committee. A starting point for and of the broad political feminist activity. Don't misunderstand me. It doesn't mean that there were not other events and many other crucial moments in our life, and that were no less important. But I believe that the Namir Committee that included around 100 women from diverse locations and organizations, the majority were unacquainted with each other. 6 were then female Knesset members, and even few men participated. It was a multi-level constructive event in the feminist field in the late 1980s. The 1980s, the committee was in 1984, 5.
1980s.
The structural and cultural discrimination of women became a cross-boundary political issue. Many of the 241 recommendations are still relevant today, unfortunately. I often compare the Namir recommendation to the Independent Declaration, a document that we will still return to it and ask ourselves what have and haven't achieved since then. Kind of women's rights declaration. Alice was part of this commission. However, to make a difference, we need social carriers, inspiring, determined, committed leaders with a vision. Alice has all this and more. She is a mensch. This is the only word probably that I know in English. Caring and supporting. The story of the Shdula, yes, the Shdula, you write in your book that it was a mistake to translate it to the network, because you saw all those women that were I think that Francis even mentioned that.
If we were told that if we called ourselves lobby, we would be considered political and we wouldn't be able to raise tax-deductible funds in the United States.
Feminism is
but in Israel it was really a breakthrough to speak about it in this terms. So the story of the Shdula of Israel Women's Lobby and what it gave to women and me personally deserves more than time. I was telling 10 minutes, but I know that I take more time, so I apologize. I decided shortly to relate to 2 projects that were very meaningful for me personally. The first is a political forum that served as a platform for training and dialogue between Knesset members and women activists in various areas. And I see some women that were here that were part of it. But it brought together women from the diverse political views. Tamar Gozhansky from the very left leftist side to the very right. I don't know if you still remember Miriam Lapid, one of the founders of Bushemonim, and many other. I apologize that I'm not mentioning the names, but you mentioned some of them. The logic of this project was not only to encourage women to enter politics, though it was very central, but it was more ambitious. It wished to create a feminist epistemic communities that are built through dialogue and that makes it possible to transcend the differential positioning and identities. And this was very unique at that time. Now we speak, it's a slogan of any feminist movement or any feminist scholar, but not at that time. The meetings were my best school to understand women and politics politics of women. And even in my book that I wrote during this time, some of the participants got chapters in my book, not Alice, but because it was about local politics. Anyway, I'm almost finishing. In my book, Nashim Realiyot, appeared in 1994, Alice wrote me greetings that I still keep with me. Among the compliments and wishes for my academic success, she also wrote me, is there a chance, she wrote it in Hebrew, I'm translating, is there a chance that now you will join the Shedula board? and I did. The second meaningful project was the Resource and Policy Research Center that was established in 1996. And I was asked to chair. Again, it presents Alice's perception of non-partisan collaboration, feminist research that activists in various fields of life work together for social change. The establishment of the center was an additional step in broadening and deepening the Shedula activities with the aim of producing new knowledge based on women's knowledge and experiences in order to constitute publics and promote social advocacy for new agenda policy, to bridge between decision makers and civil society. And I'm skipping, I just want to say some personal things that actually in 2005 I wrote a paper, published it in an academic journal telling the story of the Shedula. So, yeah, because I, in a way, indirect used, but I gave a lot of compliment, and I put it in, actually it helped me to explain my theory, to develop my theoretical thoughts, and also to use it as example. So, and of course, now as you mentioned, Professor Nomi Chazan and I are chairing a Center for Gender Knowledge initiated by the Science and Technology Ministry. So, dear Alice, thank you, Alice, for giving the opportunity to combine my professional and feminist public activities and to be part of amazing initiations for social change that you created and led. You write in your book that work plus family plus community equal WB, which means is well-being. A formula you learned from Professor of Sociology at Radcliffe. I learned it from you, Professor Alice Shlavi. Thank you. Thank you.